They say there's a door in the Cotswolds where the devil once entered and maybe never left. Deep in the Cotswolds, where honey-coloured stone meets rolling green hills, sits Stow-on-the-Wold, a market town 800 feet above sea level that feels frozen in time. The name itself tells a story. Stow comes from the Old English word for meeting place, and this hilltop settlement has been drawing people together for over 1,000 years. Originally called Edwardstow after the Saxon martyr King Edward, it became a crucial wool trading centre in medieval times, one of the wealthiest market towns in England. But today we're not here for wool or medieval commerce. At the heart of St Edward's Church stands something locals call the Devil's Door. Is it connected to medieval superstition? Did it inspire one of literature's most famous fantasy scenes? Or does it hide a darker history? I'm exploring all of this today, and trust me, this place has more layers than you might expect. St Edward's Church itself has stood here since the 12th century, though it's been rebuilt and modified many times over the centuries. It's dedicated to Edward the Confessor, the Anglo-Saxon king who ruled England before the Norman conquest. The church has witnessed nearly a millennium of English history, from medieval pilgrims to wool merchants, from Civil War soldiers to modern-day tourists. But let's focus on our mysterious door. This is the Devil's Door, weathered oak reinforced with iron nails, lit by a single oil lamp that flickers in the Cotswold breeze. The craftsmanship is typical of the late 17th century, when this north porch was added to the church. But what really catches your eye are these ancient yew trees, their gnarled roots seeming to embrace the stonework like ancient guardians. The concept of Devil's Doors isn't unique to Stow. In medieval times, the north side of churches was considered the dark side. It received less sunlight and was symbolically associated with evil spirits and the devil. This wasn't just superstition. It was practical theology. Many churches across England had Devil's Doors on the north side that were opened during baptisms, supposedly allowing evil spirits to escape as the child was cleansed of original sin. The door would then be firmly shut, trapping any lingering evil outside. What makes Stow's Devil's Door different is how it evolved beyond its original religious purpose. While many Devil's Doors were eventually bricked up or abandoned, this one has become central to local folklore and possibly literary history. These yews are over 300 years old, making them relatively young by yew tree standards. Some specimens in Britain are over 2,000 years old. They were planted when this north porch was built in the late 1600s. Probably as part of the church's reconstruction following the Civil War damage. Yew trees have one of the most complex relationships with human culture of any plant in Britain. They're incredibly toxic. Every part except the berry's flesh contains taxine, a compound that can kill humans and animals. Yet they're also symbols of immortality because they can live for millennia, and they regenerate by growing new trunks from their roots. To pre-Christian pagans, yews were sacred trees associated with death and rebirth. Celtic druids conducted rituals beneath their branches. When Christianity arrived, rather than destroying these sacred groves, early churches were often built around them. The yew became a Christian symbol too, representing both death and eternal life through Christ. But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval Christians also believed yews could trap evil in their toxic branches. Some folklore suggests that planting yews near a Devil's Door created a double barrier, the blessed threshold of the church and the supernatural prison of the trees. It's almost like a supernatural security system. The positioning of these particular yews is quite deliberate. They're planted so close to the church walls that they almost seem to be growing out of the stonework itself. Their branches interweave with the architecture, creating natural alcoves and shadowy spaces that add to the door's mysterious atmosphere. Local folklore suggests that spirits of the unquiet dead might seek shelter in these shadows, neither fully in the consecrated ground of the churchyard, nor completely outside its protection. Now here's where it gets interesting for fantasy fans, and I want to really examine this claim because it's fascinating whether it's true or not. For years, people have speculated that this doorway inspired the Doors of Durin in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. You know, the hidden entrance to the mines of Moria that opens only when Gandalf speaks the word friend in Elvish. Let's look at the evidence. Tolkien was a professor at Oxford from 1925 to 1959, just an hour's drive away from Stow. He was an avid walker who loved exploring the English countryside, particularly the Cotswolds. We know he visited nearby Morton in the Marsh multiple times, where the Bell Inn reportedly inspired the prancing pony in Bree. The landscape around Stow, those rolling hills, ancient trees and stone villages certainly evoke the Shire that Tolkien described in loving detail. The visual similarities are striking. In Tolkien's own illustrations of Moria's entrance, he drew 2 holly trees flanking stone doors. Here we have 2 yew trees flanking a wooden door, both evergreens, both with mystical associations, and both positioned as guardians. Tolkien wrote that the Doors of Durin were made by the dwarf Narvi and the elf Celebrimbor in the Second Age, invisible until moonlight revealed the elvish inscription. This door, lit by its flickering lamp in the darkness, has that same quality of being hidden in plain sight. And then there's that cottage in Stow, literally called Bag End, the same name as Bilbo's Hobbit hole. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's a pretty big one. However, the skeptics make valid points. Tolkien never mentioned this door in any of his extensive correspondence, and he was usually quite open about his inspirations. The Doors of Durin were described as stone, not wood, but that doesn't rule out an unconscious influence. Some scholars argue that Tolkien's inspiration was more likely the Roman ruins he studied, particularly doorways in ancient buildings. But here's what I think might be happening. Even if Tolkien never consciously used this specific door as inspiration, the entire landscape of the Cotswolds, its ancient churches, mysterious doorways, sacred trees and medieval atmosphere almost certainly fed into his imagination. The Cotswolds are littered with places that feel like Middle-earth, and Stow is just one of them. Whether this exact door inspired Moria is less important than the fact that places like this inspired Tolkien's entire vision of England as a magical landscape. But Stow-on-the-Wold has a much darker story than hobbits and elves, and it's this history that might explain why the Devil's Door feels so haunted. In 1646, the town was the site of the Battle of Stow, the final battle of the First English Civil War. This wasn't just any skirmish, it was a brutal, decisive clash that ended the Royalist cause in England. The battle began on March 21st, 1646, when Royalist forces under Sir Jacob Astley encountered parliamentary troops led by Colonel Thomas Morgan. The fighting started in the fields around Stow, but quickly moved into the town itself. Imagine cavalry charging through these narrow streets, musket fire echoing off stone walls, and hand-to-hand combat in the market square where tourists now peacefully browse antique shops. The Royalists were outnumbered and outgunned. After fierce fighting, they were overwhelmed, and the survivors were captured. St Edward's Church became a makeshift prison, packed with defeated soldiers. Contemporary accounts describe the church as being so full of men they could barely sit down. Some were held here for days without adequate food or water. The north door was likely added during the repairs that followed this battle. The church had been damaged by the fighting. Some accounts mention soldiers sheltering inside during the battle itself. When you look closely at the door and surrounding stonework, you can see marks and scars that locals claim are bullet holes from that day. Whether they actually are is debated, but the church certainly bears the physical and spiritual scars of that violent period. The aftermath was equally grim. The area around the north side of the church was already a pauper's burial ground, where the poor and unknown were laid to rest. After the battle, it's likely that some of the casualties, both soldiers and civilians caught in the crossfire, were buried in unmarked graves in this unconsecrated ground. The combination of violent death, hasty burials, and the existing reputation of the Northsiders' Devil's Territory created a perfect storm for supernatural legends. The reputation for haunting at Stow's Devil's Door isn't just historical folklore, it continues today. I've spoken to several locals and regular visitors who have their own stories. Some report sudden temperature drops near the door, even on warm days. Others describe hearing faint voices or whispers when the wind is still. A few have mentioned seeing shadowy figures among the yew trees, particularly around dusk. One local historian I spoke to mentioned that the church's groundkeeper has found flowers and small offerings left by the door, not tourist souvenirs, but the kind of simple tributes people leave for the dead. No one knows who leaves them or why. The psychological aspect is interesting too. This is a north-facing entrance that rarely sees direct sunlight, surrounded by trees that have toxic properties and associations with death. The door itself is weathered and imposing, with those iron studs that were originally meant to strengthen it against attack. Even without any supernatural beliefs, it's designed to feel ominous. But there might be more prosaic explanations for some of the phenomena. The yew trees can release compounds that some people are sensitive to, potentially causing headaches or unease. The acoustics around the church can create unusual sound effects. Voices from the market square might echo strangely around the stone walls and trees. And the power of suggestion is strong when you're standing at a place called the Devil's Door. Today, the Devil's Door has become one of the most photographed spots in the Cotswolds, which is saying something in a region full of picture-perfect villages. It draws an eclectic mix of visitors, Tolkien enthusiasts making literary pilgrimages, history buffs interested in the Civil War connections, ghost hunters hoping to experience something supernatural, and Instagram photographers drawn to its gothic aesthetic. The door has appeared in several documentaries about English folklore, and it's become a stop on various guided tours of the Cotswolds. Local businesses have embraced the mystery. You can find Devil's Doors postcards, t-shirts, and even a local ale named after it. In 2022, the yew trees were officially dedicated to Queen Elizabeth II as part of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations, adding a layer of modern royal connection to their ancient mystique. The dedication ceremony drew hundreds of people, turning the usually quiet corner of the churchyard into a celebration. But the commercialisation hasn't diminished the door's essential mystery. If anything, the constant stream of visitors has added new layers to the story. Social media has created a new kind of folklore. People share their photos and experiences online, creating a digital mythology that spreads far beyond Stow itself. So what is the Devil's Door really? After diving into all this history and folklore, I think it's something more complex than any single explanation. It's a medieval superstition made manifest in wood and stone. It's possibly though improvably, connected to one of literature's most beloved fantasy epics. It's a memorial to forgotten souls and a witness to historical trauma. It's a tourist attraction and a genuine mystery all at once. What strikes me most is how this simple doorway has accumulated meaning over the centuries. Each generation has added their own layer of interpretation. Medieval Christians saw it as protection against evil. Civil War survivors knew it as a place of imprisonment and death. Tolkien enthusiasts see echoes of Middle-earth, and modern visitors find it perfect for their Instagram feeds. None of these interpretations cancel out the others. They all coexist, making the door richer and more mysterious. If you're ever in the Cotswolds, Stow-on-the-Wold is definitely worth a visit. The town itself is beautiful, with its medieval market square and honey-coloured stone buildings. The Devil's Door is just one part of its appeal, but it's a fascinating one. Just remember that some places carry their mysteries for a good reason. They're meant to make you wonder, not necessarily to give up all their secrets. What do you think? Could this really have inspired Tolkien? Or is it just our desire to find magic in the everyday? Are the hauntings real? Or just the power of suggestion in a place designed to feel otherworldly? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into English folklore and history, hit that subscribe button for more explorations of Britain's mysterious places. Next time, I'll be looking at more mysterious sites, their history and their lingering ghost stories. And if you know of any other mysterious doorways or haunted locations I should investigate, drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for the next story to uncover. Thanks for watching, and remember, the best mysteries are the ones that refuse to be solved completely.